What doesn't work to heal from betrayal and addiction?
What's up,
Brannon, how's it going, man?
dude? I was just thinking, I owe you an apology.
Oh, what's that? Why?
You text me and I just totally ignored it
When was that?
yesterday.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to hear on that. You ghosted me.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. When I get a text from you, I really don't want to ghost you because it's really rare for you to be like, hey bro, how's it going?" So
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to
that's
bother
my
you.
that's my passive aggressive way of yeah, taking a shot at you.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's your way of. Now you could throw it in my face that you did something wrong. That's called the flipperoos, where you blame me for not responding back to my text because I don't text you enough. So thanks, man.
But
I'll,
but I
I'll
but
walk
I
away from this feeling more guilty.
no, but I actually hate when you text me because you got those green texts that come through that it's just like, oh, God, can't send any video, can't send any, just because you're holding strong.
Hey, isn't it true that like they're making Apple actually make it so that they can be more friendly with other devices now?
I don't want to get in this discussion with you.
Yeah, yeah.
But all I know is, yeah, I'm very happy to get texts from you, even if they are green. But I'm happy to get texts from you. So
Yeah, well, you still haven't responded, so you can text me after we're done here.
that sounds good.
Yeah.
Um, so all right, Tyler. So we want to do something just a little different today. And hopefully, as we do this, some really good principles can come out of it. Um, we're, uh, dude, I woke up with gout.
Today?
Oh, 2 days ago.
That's
I
a
can't
that's a stress thing, isn't it?
I can't hardly walk.
Oh man, I'm
It's
sorry to
just
hear that.
awful. Gout's horrible. But the reason I bring that up is because it just shows that we're old. We're getting old. And we got some years behind us, and we have some seasoning and some experience. How many hours of therapy do you think you've done?
It's funny you bring this up today, Brandon, because I was out on my walk this morning and I graduated with my master's degree in 2005, which means I started doing therapy in 2004. So I'm 2 decades into this now in terms of like the work and pretty much started specializing in addiction right after graduate school and then kind of really started diving into infidelity, sexual addiction, probably probably 5 years after graduating. So at least 15 years specifically in the world of infidelity and sexual addiction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm similar. I'm right there. I right out of school, I started getting experience with addiction recovery, and right when I got licensed, it was right into betrayal and sex addiction and those type of things. So we, needless to say, we have a lot of hours spent sitting in the therapy chair. We have a lot of hours spent sitting in group work. Um, Worked with thousands of people. We've seen it all. We've been in the trenches, and but something interesting about it, and this is really the discussion I want to have with you, Tyler, is you often say, like, 15, 20 years from now, we'll probably look back at this time and be like, God, we had no clue.
What were we
Um,
thinking?
but when we started way back in the day, we really didn't have a clue, and we got into this just, we got trained, we got experience, we
Definitely had the
learned.
heart for it.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
we I think both you and I got into it for the right reasons. Um, but little did we know that a lot of the um, I'd say modalities and philosophies behind the work that we were doing were not good and not helpful, and um, didn't really help people move toward actual recovery. And so I want to have this talk with you to talk about those things that didn't work, because I think a lot of people are still trying to apply those same things, um, and trying to get good results, but it's not working. And so because of our experience, I'd love to out that a little bit to talk about those things that didn't work. So start way back, Tyler, for you when you started working for drug court, treating addiction. I can't remember. Did you have much interaction with family members and partners then?
Yeah, so they brought me on. I was fresh out of graduate school at the time, and I was trying to get a job as a professor actually over at BYU Idaho. That's what I thought I was supposed to go to Idaho for after graduation. And in the process of that, I only got to teach adjunct classes up at the college there, but I never got like a full-time job. And so in the meantime, I was brought on to the drug courts of southeastern Idaho, which covered pretty much the whole southeastern portion from, say, like St. Anthony or Rexburg all the way down to the pretty much to the Utah border. And the reason they brought me on was specifically to do the family and marriage stuff for all of the clients who were in the drug court program. So
Oh, okay.
I worked a lot with partners, I worked a lot with parents, I worked a lot with the family members of the people who were participants, and then I also ran individual sessions and groups for the actual participants as well. So that's where I started. And even inside of that, when I started doing that kind of a work, I had been trained systemically as like a marriage and family therapist, but I was coming into a different system that was using kind of a traditional sort of sobriety slash 12-step based model at the beginning when I started. And then over the course of the years that I worked for drug court, our treatment philosophies changed significantly over 5 or 6 years and really started to really inform the way that I approached addiction and the healing side for family members.
If we're being honest, I mean, the whole field of psychiatry uh, is new, um, and mental health treatment, counseling, therapy, like this is new stuff. We don't have, you know, hundreds of years to look at the efficacy of the things that the interventions that we've done, and so like it's interesting what you're saying is I mean 15, 20 years, that's really not that long, Tyler. And yet what you were doing then, you have changed. You've had how many iterations of changing how you actually approach this. And what I would guess is you've tried to rely on academia and evidence-based practices and those type of things. But now, for me at least, I rely on that a lot. I love certain modalities, but it's also like just the experience that I have of knowing what works and what doesn't. And a lot of those things that are just put in front of you as a young therapist, they just don't work. And so what wasn't working, Tyler, as you were learning, as you were shifting, and why did they change the way that you did the treatment?
Yeah, well, and Brandon, you can speak to this. In fact, you probably ought to throw in your kind of journey as we go along too, so people can see how and why we might both see the way that we do, even though we're slightly different on things sometimes too. Um, what I recognized, and this is something that I felt like there's a number of principles inside the world of recovery that sort of swing like a pendulum from one end to the other,
Yes.
back and forth as you go. And so one of those things was um, the principle. Let's just take one principle. When I started, like the number one principle in working with someone with an addiction, especially in the legal system, was accountability,
Mm.
accountability. Like, you'd have different groups that were basically just accountability groups, or they'd call them call out groups, or they'd call them, like confrontation groups where you'd be confronting people's integrity and their behaviors. And, it was really just to try to hammer them into saying, you got to be accountable at all costs, right? And the truth is that the principle of accountability, at least in my mind, is a vital principle in the process of recovery, but the modality of the way that it was being taught sometimes was a little bit too far end of the pendulum swing.
Ha- have you seen me run groups like that?
Do you remember? You remember, Brandon? You gifted me the opportunity. So I was working for the drug courts, and then you got out of graduate school, and you were working for a different place, but then you started your own thing,
Hmm.
and you were running some online groups, and you said, "Hey, Tyler, why don't you come be a co-therapist with me in a couple of
Yeah,
these
come
groups?
shadow this, come be here with me.
Yeah, come be here
Yeah.
with me." And
I think you were a little
so,
shocked.
like the first couple of groups that you we ran, I was like, "Whoa, Brannon, like, dude, you don't have to, you're like a bulldog, man. Like you're like chomping on everything. Like every single time a dude says something or like, I'm like, whoa, like it's all right, man. You can slow play this a little bit,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I love that you bring this up, Tyler, because I've been through this transformation myself. It's interesting because I think naturally I'm actually kind of soft spoken and non-confrontational. And when I got trained as a young therapist, I was told that if you don't grow some thicker skin, addicts, and we called everybody addicts, addicts are going to eat your lunch. So you better toughen up and you go into these groups and you are a bulldog and you get in people's faces if you need to. You hold them accountable. You get the group to hold them accountable. Like you lay it down. And I got really good at that. And um, I don't think that was effective. Um, I love accountability. I love accountability. But accountability is best served through love, compassion, understanding, and then you can hold accountable. It's not best served through attacking, confrontation, triggering someone's shame even more, telling them what a failure they are, or how that doesn't get them to recovery. It doesn't help. Um, and so I've definitely learned that. But I was, yeah, I was trained that way. Like, hey, I'm not scared. Like, let's let you want to go with me on a principle of your denial. Like, let's go. I can slice and dice your denial down to the point where you're wallowing on the ground and with your intellect. And but you know what? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So
So the challenge, Brannon, is that, and here's where the pendulum starts to swing, is that we were kind of trained in an era where it was accountability at all costs, but the accountability was often paired with shame.
yes.
And shame would be like the personal attacks that you'd add in to help bring about the take the blinders off and help them see their like the need to be accountable,
Which
right?
is crazy because the underlying problem is the shame. So now we're trying to use shame to help them heal.
We were using
It's
shame to
crazy.
help hold them accountable, which was then reinforcing the shame. But now they were being held accountable. And in drug court, it was like they had big time consequences. So now we're coming and we're trying to, with good hearts, like honestly, like we just think we're speaking real to them, right? But there's a difference in speaking real to somebody and calling somebody up and out
Yes,
rather than talking down to somebody to bring them to accountability,
absolutely.
right? And so what would happen is like, and this is where the pendulum swings, and sometimes it's going to swing too far, and you can almost see it happening now in our world of recovery, where certain people are still over there, but now it's swinging all the way over to compassion, love, empathy. That is the way, and the problem is that that doesn't have any accountability, and and it's lacking in boundaries,
Yeah.
and and somewhere in the middle is accountability paired up with empathy and understanding and boundaries, healthy boundaries. That's the middle path.
Well,
That's where we both kind of have landed over the last several years.
well, Tyler, honestly, what I've learned is the best intervention as a therapist that you can give somebody is healthy attachment. And when I'm in the middle of like a dog fight, where it's like, hey, I am making it about me. I'm like showing them how strong I am. I'm showing them how I'm going to hold them accountable and do. But when I differentiate myself from the client or from the person, then I can absolutely love them and be honest. And I can absolutely hold them accountable, but hand it back over to them. Like, if you want these consequences, that's up to you.
Yeah.
I'm just my job is just to help you see the reality here. But I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. But here's like what you're choosing. And and I love you. I see you. I hope you don't choose those consequences, but you can kind of see the difference. When I'm not involved, when I'm not so important, I can do better therapy.
I think, Brandon, that's something that I've seen in you and I've felt in myself over the course of our careers is, and anybody's like this, when you're fresh out of graduate school and you have some passion, you want to go save the world. Most therapists get into therapy because they want to help other people and they run the risk of wanting to be the savior for other people.
Right.
And over the course of the years, I think both you and I have realized that we're not that.
No.
And when we try to make it wholly about us, we're actually not a very good resource for the people that are coming to
Exactly.
see us. It doesn't allow us the freedom to actually be as authentic if you cannot take whatever's coming personally and not let your client like have to tell you you're amazing,
Yeah.
then you can then actually be honest with them and say, yeah, that doesn't seem to be working real well for you. And
Yeah.
it's your choice, and here's what your choices are going to lead you to. And even I can even be honest with you and say my values don't even align with what you're choosing to do. But if you choose to do that, like
That's up to you.
that's
You get the
that's up to you, and
consequences.
and you get to own it. And that's something that I think is a principle that has really settled in with me over the years is being able to surrender outcomes and prize. There's a certain principle that I prize above almost everything else in terms of what it means to be a human being, and that is every single human being is gifted the opportunity of their own choices.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
choice trumps about anything else. Choice comes with consequences and outcomes.
Right.
And I tend to lean heavily on making sure that everybody keeps choice in their own corner as much
Yeah.
as possible.
Yeah. You're not in the middle of it. Um, I want to back up just a little bit, Tyler, and give you a scenario here of let's say I'm 15 years ago, Brannon, right? The bulldog, and a couple comes into my office and betrayal has happened recently. There's frustration going on in the marriage. There's discord, and I just start laying into the guy for what an
So
addict he
he's the one
is.
who's been cheating and has the addiction.
Yeah, what an addict he is, how horrible he is, this, that, whatever. I'm holding him accountable, and I'm doing it right in front of her. Um, what does that do? What does that do to her? A lot of
Well,
times.
well, it actually feels really good to her.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, finally, because what it does is it validates her experience and says, okay, somebody sees this, like my pain is legitimate because of these things this guy has done to me, right?
Yep.
And it feels good to have somebody who's willing to speak so straight, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like finally, like all this pain that I've been feeling, someone's seeing why I'm feeling it, and they're going after him for hurting me, right?
yeah.
Um, and so and this is the trick that Jody used all the time, and what she taught me, which isn't healthy or good, is you do that and you lock the client in to therapy for a while because it's like, oh, good, finally, like somebody who's going to hold you accountable. The problem is you're still using that shame. You're also um, really kind of putting somebody in a one up, one down position, which doesn't work. Um, Another thing way back then, Tyler, and I'm sure you'll remember this, was the codependent model. Was you take the partner and you say, okay, like yeah, they're an addict and you're a codependent.
You're a co-addict.
That term was used often. You're a co-addict. You're a codependent. Um, and so that's how we were first trained: is like stop enabling, have like tough love, hard boundaries, and stop enabling. And read codependent no more. So go do that and have your boundaries and don't enable. And so it was this kind of weird thing of like blame the addict for all the horribleness, but in a like almost passive aggressive way, blame the partner for creating how the addict is, right? This is so effed up. This is so not good for recovery for anybody. But I hate to say it, this was the model. Like this was the
Yeah.
model that I was taught for both drug addiction and sex addiction.
Yeah. Well, I think the challenge to that, Brandon, is what you just described is that inside of both sides of that, you can see that there's some true principles laced into it, but the way that it gets taught and dispersed is where the problem lies,
Yes.
right? So someone who's been betrayed and maybe is in a relationship where there is some level of, tendencies towards codependency, not being able to stand on my own 2 feet or set my own boundaries or whatever, they'd be called the co-addict, and then they'd be say, hey, it's all your fault. You need to do this, and this. When you look at like the actual true principles inside of that, there is like, yeah, we do need to want you to grow into understanding who you are more fully, living in your own authenticity, stepping into your own boundaries, owning your own strength and goodness. Like, we want you to do all of that because what you've been doing hasn't been feeding that at all, right?
Right.
But
Right.
the way that was dispersed was with shame and
And
blame,
blame.
and yet the principles, some of the principles underneath it are true, and they actually resonate with a lot of the people that we work with. And the same would be true for the addict side, is like, look, you do need to have somebody there to kind of be some structure for you to see your own denial, but we can help you do that. And this is where I think you and I both changes. We can help you do that by treating you in your humanity and by being firm with certain boundaries without having to make it cutting and personal.
Right. The it's interesting where it went, Tyler. You talk about pendulum swings. So from codependency, we swung the pendulum, right?
Yeah.
Over to betrayal trauma. And, Barbara Steffens wrote her book and it kind of spurred the whole thing. And it was
Yeah.
like, don't you dare blame me for your addictions and things like that. And what you and I talk about a lot, we talked about it last week on an episode, is how if you swing over to the betrayal trauma side of things, there's a danger there too, which is you then don't take accountability
There's no
for
accountability
your own
for your own
healing
healing.
as the partner. Um, and you are completely justified to stay stuck in a victim stance. And but when this happened in our field, Tyler, when Barbara Steffens is speaking at conferences there's all Omar Minwala and all these people are talking about it, and you got I'm not going to list more people at these conferences, but the same people were speaking every time, and these were the same people touting codependency 3 years earlier. Are now like, no, it's all betrayal trauma and multidimensional trauma and this and that and all this stuff. Um, what it what it did was it set up an unhealthy system for recovery. Um, uh, can you speak to that, Tyler, as to why?
Yeah, well, again, if you look at the pendulum swing, what it was music to the ears of the person who'd been blamed for stuff they hadn't done before, and it felt
So
really good.
absolutely, that feels good.
It felt good, and there was some validity to it. There's some empathy there. There's some like understanding. There's some like, hey, look, you don't have to take all the pressure on yourself to fix this because not all of it is yours, right? That was the goodness in what came out of the pendulum swing when, say, I think the name of the book was Your Sexually Addicted Spouse, is what it was
Right.
called, by Barbara Steffens, right? And even us, Brandon, we're
Like
reading these stuff,
a
and I'm
lot of
going,
principles of truth
I'm
there.
going,
Like,
amen.
yeah,
Like, this is true. This is true. This is true. But then where it ends is it goes and it gets stuck a little bit over there, at least in my mind, a little too far, which is now, and until your partner does this,
yes,
and this, then you should stay mad at him and you should be totally cut off from him and keep your boundaries. They call
yeah,
it boundaries,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Yep.
And then it's like, but then we're working with our clients, and I'm like, something isn't quite working here, because now what we're setting up, and we're using your example, is okay, good. Now the betrayed partner is feeling supported, understood, validated, but it's really easy to capitalize on the earlier stages of the grieving process of the shock, the trauma, and the anger.
Right,
And now we'll fuel the anger,
right,
and we'll call this other partner now. The other partner has now not just become the person who betrayed or the person who's addicted. they've become the abuser.
The abuser, the addict. They're like
Yeah,
not human.
they've become the abuser. And now everything that they do, including some of the healthy stuff that they have to do to climb out of the hole of their addiction, is now abuse.
Yeah.
So like one of the healthy things that we teach our, like say the guy that we're talking about in the example is, hey, you know what? You showed up not authentic. You showed up small. You showed up not actually showing your true opinions. You showed up with no boundaries in your relationship. You're going to have to learn how to step into being more authentic and having boundaries in your relationship. And the minute that they start to do that, they're slammed down for being abusive
Right.
because they have an opinion or because they set a boundary,
But
right?
Tyler, let me play devil's advocate here and argue BTR's side here a little bit. Aren't they abusive? Aren't they like gaslighting and emotionally abusive and manipulative? And uh, I don't believe. Well, I do believe that there's such thing as that,
There
but
is.
I don't believe that everybody struggling with this is that.
I
Um,
think that's the hard part, Brandon, is that in the past, yes, like I have been abusive, I have been gaslighty, I have misled, I've lied. It was all in a form of self-protection, but yes, the outcome on you has been that it's been abusive, right? And if I'm going to try to change course, I'm going to have to learn how to have a voice, set some boundaries, step into my own authenticity, and allow you to choose whether or not you're going to want to be with me,
I, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um,
I think the key here, Tyler, is like if I can explain this. Let's say that this person struggling with addiction is doing some manipulative things and some I'll even say abusive things. Um the and this is really hard, but if you can look at your partner as doing the best that they possibly can, and let's say that's even being abusive, that's what they're doing. It's then up to you to say, here's my boundaries around that. And when we say boundaries, we don't mean it in the way of controlling them. We mean it in the way of you need to protect you. And if you can see them as doing the best that they can, you're not stuck in a state of blame. You can actually see them through a lens of love. But when you go to treatment and they stick a lens of they suck and they are the problem, what they're doing is helping you resonate in a state of grief, in that anger state of grief. And so you're not moving forward along the stages of grief. You're just staying stuck right there and you're not getting better. Um, and so it feels like treatment because here you are feeling empowered to feel this energy of anger and holding these quote boundaries, but that's not healthy treatment. That's not helping you move beyond that and actually seeing your partner with compassion and love and understanding with where they're at.
yeah, I think the boundaries are messy, and sometimes you maybe set them a little, again, pendulums when you set them, when you haven't set the right boundaries, you swing a little bit too far sometimes, and then eventually you nestle into the right ones. But right healthy boundaries include, and this is why I think the perspective you said is when I can see my partner on either side as doing the best they can, it doesn't absolve me of then making choices. But now because I see that this is their best response, therefore I need to do this, this, and this for myself.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and I can still care about them, love them, even though I might even have to take emotional space or distance from them as a result of their choices that they're making.
Right.
Right. But that's different than making the boundary based off of resentment, vindictiveness, anger, that judgment. Because then what happens is the heart stays at war in the person who's actually setting the boundary. And it also doesn't help things go right because most partners, if they're actually staying in a relationship trying to figure out whether or not to stay or go, what they really want is they want their partner to start stepping into a space of being honest, authentic, accountable, empathetic,
Yeah.
all of those things.
Yeah.
And where I think we kind of when we swung from like call out shame culture all the way over to like, validate partner's pain, there's no responsibility on your part. What we started to do is we started to create, and this, I don't know if you see this or not, Brandon, but we started to create this place where there were now a bunch of relationships where the betrayed partner finally feels safe enough in their boundaries, but they still resent their spouse and they
Yeah.
still, it's like a one up, one down
The
position.
relationship gets worse.
And then the betraying partner has learned, okay, but if I just hurry and jump every time I'm told to jump how high, and if I just make sure
Mr.
that my
Nice Guy.
partner's, yeah, Mr. Nice Guy, my partner's always feelings are always taken care of, and my partner never feels any bad things, and it's all my fault for that, then what ends up happening is that that fuels the shame of the person who's trying to climb out of the hole of their own shame and addiction, at the
Yep.
same time that it doesn't really provide safety
Safety
and
and
structure
trust.
in the relationship because there's no authenticity in that.
Yes.
But it feels kind of safe on both sides. It's like, have you seen? It just came out like this week. Have you seen the new JP Awakens skit that he's kind of
Mm-mm.
making fun of the lady who just went viral for saying she wanted to divorce her husband, even though he's like an amazing guy?
Mm-mm. Haven't seen it.
Oh man, yeah, it kind of made me cringe inside when I watched the video because I was like, oh, I think a lot of the like say the men that we've worked with in the past probably would relate to the figure in the skit of like, oh, this is what recovery should look like.
Interesting.
And it doesn't really look that way, at least anymore, the way that we try to teach it in terms of healing. What we're trying to heal is both partners' hearts into their own authenticity, so that in their authenticity they can offer themselves to the relationship and either it will work or it won't.
You just right there kind of finally hit on it. I feel like we're running out of time, and there's a whole other segment. There's a whole other progression into what we believe and what we do now. And you kind of said it there, where and it's honestly, Tyler, it's the way that we approach treating trauma now. Where we focus more on your individual healing, finding peace within yourself, inside, healing your heart, um, trusting yourself, knowing yourself, being conscious, understanding your power. Those type of things, when you're grounded like that and you do that work and you desensitize a lot of the trauma triggers and know that your trauma doesn't define you, then all of the things with the relationship start to naturally get better as a result, because as an individual, each partner can show up with strength, with integrity, which then leads to trust, which then leads to things like intimacy and things like that. So I just tried to fly through that, but um, yeah, our approach has shifted more into that, hasn't it?
Yeah. And it seems to be, again, Brannon, we'll be talking about this 10 or 15 years from now, and we'll probably be making adjustments as we go. I was thinking when you said that earlier today, if I were to go back to like a decade ago and talk to some of my clients who actually really did get better, and they looked at how I do things now versus then, they'd say, wow, Tyler, you've made a lot of adjustments. Like you do things really differently. Even though I think at the core, the principles that helped them get better then would be the same principles that help now. It's just a matter of the way that they're being taught and reinforced is probably a little bit different than it was, or a lot different than it was in the past.
I cringe when I think of some of the stuff I've done in the past, and I'll admit to that. And I thought I was doing the right stuff. I really
Yeah, good
did.
intentions, right?
Yeah, and I just think of when I wasn't the greatest therapist, I still had clients just thrive and do well and get better. And to me, if anything, that proves that, um, kind of that inner work and that drive and that willingness, that self determination. I might have been a crappy therapist, and those people, they still used me to help themselves get better.
Yeah.
That in spite of me, they were determined to help themselves change the outcomes of their life. And it's actually kind of awesome to think about. And I think, Tyler, we're more kind of, I wouldn't say kind of, we're more, um, we're big time assets for people to step into, um, who they are now. And so, yeah, we're instruments and tools to help people do that. But ultimately, that is within themselves,
The
right?
power is already within every single individual, which is really encouraging to me when you think
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Tyler, good
well,
discussion. I think we could go on and on. We kind of scratched the beginning, the
yeah,
surface of our journey.
we talked about like the first couple of years.
Yeah.
There's definitely been some changes over the years. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you guys, thanks for listening. Hopefully this got you thinking, if nothing else. And until next time, keep on keeping on.